In today's video, you're gonna learn how to build tiers and subscription plans with multiple products into one reusable. So you can take this reusable component and just drag and drop it anywhere in your app and have this fully functional UI with different product and tiers that you can press on any button to go to the Stripe checkout page and pay for your tier. And once you fill out the details and you go and subscribe to this tier, it will go back to the bubble page and it will take all the information that happened in the Stripe checkout and create your own subscription inside our app. So now, because I've joined the premium tier, I have bought a premium subscription of $800 and the status is active. So you'll learn how to do the UI, how to do the workflows, the APIs and the database structure that you need to power this feature up. Alright, so I prepared a guide that you can just follow. It has 5 big steps to making this functionality happen, and all the instructions are here in the guide. So even without the video, you can build it yourself. So here we just have a small description of what we're gonna build. I already covered it in the intro. There's a note here that we're gonna build it as a reusable element that we can just easily use it in any place in the app. Maybe we have a few places that we have a paywall or call to action that we want to show this type of subscription plan. Now the first step will be the easiest, and it's just starting by building the UI. So the UI is pretty simple. We only have here one reusable element that I call component subscription plans, and inside this reusable element I have a repeating group of products. So it's just a list of products that I also get it from the reusable element. So wherever we put this reusable element, we just need to pass a list of products to the reusable element and it all will be here. So for the case that your app has more than 3 products or even 10 products, you can play around with it and just give it a different list of products and it will adjust automatically. Now inside the repeating group, we have the plan container. It's not too complicated, very simple stuff, texts, icon, button, everything is pretty simple. I believe you can figure it out, you're a smart cookie. Now we have the plan container. It's a align to parent group. Why? Because I want to have this recommended UI, and if the product recommended field is yes, I show this UI. So I made an align to parent because I wanted this badge to be stuck to the right top corner. And I just make the borders of this plan container group yellow once the current sales product is actually recommended. So the recommended badge is pretty simple. It's just a text and a background. And the product plan is the real group that we need to design. So as you can see, it's just a text, another text. This will be a repeating group of list of texts and a button. Now, before we go into the product plan and understand why and what I inserted in those texts, we need to go and see the database. So here we can see the structure of the database. I will show you it in the app, but you have everything here. And I also marked all the relevant objects in credit card. So we will see here in the database, every object that has a credit card is related to our subscription plans. We don't use this log data type. We also don't use the user data type too much. We just save a Stripe customer ID on the user object as a text field. And now we have 3 data types that are actually responsible to managing all the subscriptions securely. So the first one is the product. In the product, we have the features. It's a list of text. This is what we see here. We have the name. The name is this one, standard. We can call it however we like it. We have the plan level. This is something that we actually don't use yet, but I like to make things scalable from the start. So I also give the plan level, and it's an option set that can help us differentiate different plans and organize them as we scale. Now we also have the product ID that we get from Stripe. So we could even add here Stripe product ID and the recommended field to know which product should trigger the recommended UI. And now the first field is the default price. So every product will have its default price, and then if we want to change very easily and test, we can just change the product's price and we will change the whole price that the user actually buy. So now The price data type has an amount number, how much dollars money does it cost. We can also add here currency, and then we can support multiple currencies. Now we have an interval, subscription interval, so every price is either a monthly price or yearly price. We can of course expand it and make it daily, quarterly. We have a lot of options that we can, or lifetime. Is archived is just something that I added. We don't really use it in this build, because if we want to not use any prices anymore, we can archive it. Now each price is created for a specific product, so we have there the connection. Each price also have a Stripe price ID that we need to save, and this user manageable is also similar to is archived. Maybe we allow to users sell products in our platform, so maybe we want to give those price permissions to some users. But also, don't worry about it right now, we don't use it in the build. The subscription is basically a connection between the user who bought the product and the product itself, so we have all the details in one place. And we store a few extra fields here. We can store more, but for now status is enough for us to realize it's active. We're not gonna use any of the status, we're just gonna use active. Once the user actually buys the product, the subscription will become active. But later on, we can add more functionalities to it, like upgrade, downgrade, cancel, free trial, a lot of things that we can do here. Now we also save the Stripe customer ID here. And lastly, we have the subscription ID that we also save from Stripe. So this was just a quick overview of the UI and the database for you to understand the bigger picture. And now let's continue to step 3. Step 3 is all the API calls. So what you need to do, you need to first of all go to Stripe, open an account if you haven't yet. Now once you open an account, you need to go to the test mode, okay, sandbox. You can go from here and go to the test mode. Once you are in test mode, you'll have this publishable and secret key. You can click to copy the secret key, and then inside our bubble app, you can create a new API named Stripe. You can pass here the bearer with the secret key. This is how we do the authorization. Pretty simple stuff, private key in header. You have everything here. This is just to authorize. This is what we need to do to connect the bubble app to the right Stripe account, this Stripe account. Now, after we authorized ourselves, we need to use the endpoints that Stripe offers us. So we're just gonna use 4 endpoints to create this functionality. First one we'll need is the create customer. Now, create customer only requires a name and an email, and then we make the call and get the customer ID. Here is the point that we save the customer ID to the user. Once we have the customer ID, the next thing that we need to do is to create a checkout session. Now, don't be confused of all the calls here. We're not gonna use them all, or only the ones that are open. Now here we have a create checkout session, and it's a special API call. I've probably done hundreds, if not thousands, of different API calls to different endpoints. And honestly, this is the only one. Only Stripe has those type of calls that you need to do. So the regular way that we use JSON and we pass parameters, it's fine with 99% of APIs. But this one is special, and it took me a long time to realize how to actually configure the call. But you're lucky, I have done it in the past, so now it will be easier for you. So Stripe basically asks the content type to be this XWWW form URL encoded. And it doesn't really change too much what we need to do. So we can still send to this content type, this type of body parameters that we add, right? Here. But the difference here with this specific Stripe call, they use this type of parameters. They expect us to send them line items, 0 quantity, right? They use an array in the parameters themselves. And once we try to put the parameters themselves like this in here, it just doesn't work. So if you have this type of parameter, right? So here we can see that we have line items. From these line items, we call item number 0. So that's the first item, and it's quantity field. Now, because we handle here a nested field, right? Because Usually we have only one field, line items, success URL, cancel URL, one item. But now we need to handle also taking the first item of the line items, and we also need to take the quantity field. So it's nested data. And my main point here is when we use this type of nested data, and we need to pass parameters for it, the only way that I found that works in our API connector in Bubble is to use this body type raw, and instead the usual JSON body that we use the raw body with those prefix for dynamic values. So here you can see I make this prefix, and then I have the success URL parameter, and then I make the prefix again. This creates my dynamic value, right? So now I can insert a success URL dynamically from the API call. A few key points here. So let's go to this. Yeah. So create customer is pretty easy. To create a customer ID, we can charge the user and keep track in Stripe. So we just want to save the customer ID from this response. When you build it, make each API call and initialize the call to see it works, save the response, and then we'll use it later in the workflows. Now the get subscription is pretty simple. We just send the subscription ID into the URL parameters, and we do it to get the subscription details, but this is the last API call that we're gonna use. The second API call after creating a customer is this one. So as you can see, we have a success URL, a cancel URL, a customer ID, and a price ID, and the user ID. Now important points about this API call. So Stripe requires a success and cancel URL. So what happens if the user successfully made the payment and purchased the product? Or what happens if he just canceled or the credit card didn't pass and he just went out from the session? We need to know that as the developers in order to take the details and make the right changes in Bubble. And only if he actually paid, we can give him an active subscription. The success URL should be the page URL that you send the user from, or either a page that you want the user to go when he makes a successful purchase. And you must add this session ID equals checkout session ID. This is what tells Stripe that we want to get the session ID back and get the details from the session that the user made. I will show you exactly how it looks like when we need to insert it to the call. Just understand that you need to ask Stripe for the session ID. Now we also have the cancel URL. We may want to send something extra with the cancel URL, like a URL parameter of failed, in order to show the user a UI of a failed payment, for example. We also need to send the customer ID so Stripe knows which user is actually paying and keep track of the user payments throughout our apps. Stripe also requires a customer ID. This is basically the user ID Stripe uses to manage the customers that buy in your app. And they also require the price ID. And I will show you exactly how we create the product in Stripe and also get the price ID. So don't worry. And we also send the user ID in the metadata just for us to have a way to track which user actually bought the subscription. Now this is the main complex call here. So we'll see how that works. But once a user is successfully bought the product, he will go to the success URL, and from the success URL, if you remember, we get from Stripe the session ID, checkout session ID, right? And then we get the checkout session by sending the session ID to this endpoint of get checkout session. And with that response, we can get the subscription ID that was created from a successful payment. And then we go to our first call with the get subscription endpoint and pass the subscription ID that we just got from the get checkout session to get the subscription details and save it in our app as an active subscription of the user. All right, so let me organize all of the talk that we've done until now, and I will show you how the calls exactly look like. So first of all, we just need to create a customer. Now it's the part when we initialize all the calls, so we can later use them as actions. Okay, it's important to use them as actions once we make the workflows and the backend workflows to power this functionality. Now, for the create customer, pretty simple. We just need to pass a name and an email, nothing too much. We initialize the call and we get here the customer ID, body ID. This is our JSON. Yes. So this is the ID of the customer. This is what we want to save on the user object. You can click save, and then after we got the customer ID, we can initialize the create checkout session. So for the create checkout session, you just go to your page. Let's say this is our base URL, right? So you take your base URL, copy paste, you paste it here, but with this addition, right? So we have session ID equals curly brackets, checkout session ID. So if I just paste the base URL and a question mark to signal this is a URL parameter. So we go to the page up with the session ID equals checkout session ID. This is the way Stripe knows to return us the right checkout session ID once we successful. Now, if the user canceled the payment and it wasn't successful, we still pass the same app URL. Now we can also ask for it to send us the app URL for parameter failed payment equals yes, just for example. And now once we have failed payment equals yes on our page, we can show the user a pop-up of some kind that payment has failed, please try again. Now we pass the customer ID that we've just created in the first call. And the price ID is something that currently we do manually. We don't need to automate it because we don't need that many price IDs. For this example, we only need 3. Once you get the Stripe API key, the secret key from here, you can go to the product catalog and you can create a product. Now, what I've done is just to create a product for monthly, product for yearly, and another product for yearly. So how you do it is just taking this recurring and billing period either monthly or yearly. This is what I used, just the difference between billing periods and the amount, right? We have 94, we have almost 800, and we have almost 2700, right? You can also create one-off products, but right now we're more about this suite subscription, MMR, and ARR. Now you just need to add a name, description is optional, and you can add an image is also optional. Once you create the product, it will be right here. You can click on the product and you can see the product ID. So the product ID is also important. We're gonna need it for the product object that we have in Bubble. And here you can see also the price ID that we've created. So you can just click this menu and copy the price ID. And then once you copy the price ID, you can just paste it here. The user ID, just create a user in the database, single user. And for the products, as you can see, I took the Stripe product ID and pasted here. And also for the prices, we have the price ID. Everything I've done manually because we only need 3. We don't need a big list of prices and products that's changing all the time. So it's okay to do it manually. And we don't need to bother connecting APIs because it's very simple here in the Stripe dashboard. Now, once we have everything done, we have the price, we have the customer, and we have the user ID, we can initialize the call. Once we initialize the call, we should get, first of all, we get this checkout session ID. In this build, I don't save it, but it's important to know that you can save it right now and then refer it later. This can be useful for sure. But what we use here is this, I think it's in the end. Yes, this URL. So we get URL checkout Stripe, this one. So the last option, it's pretty long. Exactly. So this is the checkout URL that we get. Now, once you can copy it right now and just test it. So I'm opening a new browser, pasting the URL. As you can see, it sends me to the Stripe checkout for subscription SaaS premium of $7.99. Now we can pay with the test credit card that Stripe allows. This is the credit card, just make a valid expiration date. I won't subscribe now because the flow isn't connected. We just took it from the initialization. Just make sure you get to this page and everything's fine and you see the right price. This is the important part now. After we initialize the call and get the checkout session URL, we will be sent to this success URL with the session ID. And then we take the session ID. Actually, it was smart to do complete this URL Stripe checkout. Yeah, it still allows me to. Once I complete it, I can get the session ID in our success URL, right? Because we send the success URL of some kind. So it was successful, as you can see. So now, because the functionality is already working, it automatically take the session ID and turn it to a successful subscription. So now, because you haven't configured the workflows yet, you will see the full session ID here and it won't auto process it. Okay, so I won't do the flow again. You can just take this session ID that you get here, copy it and paste it inside this get checkout session with the session ID in the URL parameters. Now, once we get this session ID, the important part here is to find, so you have the subscription field with the subscription ID. Once we have the subscription ID, we can go to the last final fourth call, paste the subscription ID, and get all the details that we need from the subscription. And once we get this call, that means we've created a subscription ID and the user has paid. We can safely create a subscription object and save the subscription ID and the customer Stripe ID, which we do get from the get subscription API call, but we also can have it from the owner. Right now I'm not logged in, so this is why it's empty. All right, so we've configured the database, we've configured the API calls. Let me just throw you back into the UI. And now that we have a solid understanding of how the infrastructure here works, you can understand what I did here. So basically I take for each cell of the product in the repeating group, I take the default price that we assign to it. Everything is done manually, right? I've done the prices and the product manually. It's not automatic. I added the prices and the products. So every product has a default price. I take the default price amount. In this case, it's the $94. I format it as a currency, increasing in size a little bit. And then I take the parent group's product again. Default price interval is monthly, format as a text. So I ask basically, is the interval is monthly? If it's monthly, I write month. If it's not monthly, I write year, because I know I have only two options currently. If you have more than two options, you can set inside the option set a field that is called plan interval display or something similar. Now this is clear for the price that we're seeing. The parent group's product name, pretty simple, standard, VIP or premium. Now here I added another repeating group of texts, very lightweight. We have a parent group's features, a list of text, and each cell just have an icon to show some nice UI, and the parent group's text that showcases all the features of this current plan. Okay, so for this button, I plan to do a free trial field on the plan level option set, but I deleted it. So it doesn't matter, but what I try to do it is try for free if the plan level has a free trial, and if it doesn't have, is just join the plan level display uppercase. So the plan level display is either standard, premium or VIP, and I wanted everything in uppercase, so that's why I added that operator. Just to scream, I'm a CTA, buy me. Now I think the UI is not complicated. If you understand the API stuff, the UI is very, very simple. Let's go back to the document and see what more we need to do. So we're in step 4. In step 4, we need to make a backend. Okay, this is a backend workflow and API workflow with only two params. We need to get the session ID and the user. So let's see it in the backend workflows. I have this Stripe. Okay, this user doesn't matter. The Stripe backend workflow. So I've created a new API workflow. I called the endpoint name handle session ID. Okay, so this was our third and fourth call, right? We have the get checkout session that we get from the session ID. And then we call get subscription that we get the subscription ID from get checkout session subscription, right? I showed you in the initialization of the APIs. We have that field subscription with the subscription ID. We pass it right away to another API call. So this is the third one I explained. This is the fourth one I explained. And then we get the subscription ID and we create the subscription itself. So this is just how we handle the session ID. This is the end, right? Before the end, we also need to make some workflows on the front end, and we'll see the first and second API call in action. Now, when we create a subscription, we search for the product, first item, the body plan product, right? From this subscription ID, we get a product ID inside a plan product field. Okay, you can search it in the initialization, and it will also show you it here. So I'm just, because I've saved manually the Stripe product ID on the product object, I can search the plan product equals to Stripe product ID and find the right product ID and see the subscription has been bought with the right product. I immediately set the status is active because we only handle session ID once the payment was successful. I also saved the Stripe customer ID again, but from the get subscription call, not from the create customer call. And then I also saved the subscription ID. It's just the first one, body ID, and the user is the owner. So we pass here the user once, just for this field in the end. This way is how we create the subscription and the connection between the bought product and the owner, and we see it here. So once we create a subscription, it appears here. This is the functionality. Now, I think you all understood how it works in terms of the backend workflows, right? You have everything here documented. And now step 5, so the triggers. So now we've created everything. We have the infrastructure, we have the backend workflow, everything works. We can handle the session ID, the checkout, and everything. Now the missing parts are 2 workflows. The one that triggers the checkout, right? So when a user clicks join premium, something should happen. This is trigger 1. And trigger 2 is when the Stripe checkout sends us a successful URL, we need to somehow handle this URL with the backend workflow. So this is trigger 2, the backend workflow, but we need to trigger it from the front end and then send it to the backend workflow to do its magic. So we have only 2 workflows: when we send the user to the checkout and when we get the details from the checkout when the user has been sent from Stripe back to our app. So yeah, all preparation has been done. So now we just need to do 2 more workflows for the join button and the get session ID when user comes back. So how it looks like. Everything is documented here in very details, but I will show you it in the Bubble editor. So if I go to the component subscription plans and I go to the workflow, we can see we have 2. So first workflow is when I click the button. Okay, it's just button, edit workflow, right? Once I click on the button, I then make a conditional step. So if the current user Stripe customer ID is empty, then do create me a customer ID because the user needs a customer ID, right? So if the user has never generated his customer ID and we never saved it on the user object, then we do want to make the create customer API call with the full name of the user and the email. Then from this, we get the customer ID, right? So here, how we handle this customer ID first step is customer user Stripe customer ID is empty. So if it's empty, then get the customer ID from the, like in the API initialization. And if the customer ID is not empty, we use the current user Stripe customer ID because it's not empty and we have already one. So we didn't need to create one from the start. Now for the price ID, I use a parent group's products, default price ID. This is what we entered manually, right? Because we can do it from here. We have product ID and price ID. Great. And lastly, current user unique ID, we pass the user ID so we can later manipulate it. When things get complicated, we wished that when things get complicated, it will become very useful. Now, let's start with a cancel URL. So how I like every OAuth, every type of redirect URL that I pass any kind of API, if it's signing up with Google, signing up with LinkedIn and stuff like that, I always like to use this website home URL expression because even if we're on the development version test, and even if we are in the live version live, or just eliminating that string, it always sends the right one because once we click it somewhere, it takes the website home URL and we don't need to worry which version we are. then I just add this statically, because currently I just plan to send it from the app. But if we want to make it dynamic, we can also send the page name or the complete URL. We have a lot of solutions how to do it here, but this is how I like to do it when it's only for single page. So I call the website home URL. It already adds this slash in the end, so we don't need to add the slash. I just write the page name called app, and question mark session failed equals yes. So if Stripe sends us the cancel URL, we can then flag for the user the payment has failed. Would you like to try again? Or some type of a model like this. So I hope this is pretty clear. I don't know how to expand on that. And here, pretty much the same in success URL, website home URL, expression with the app. That's our page name. We can see everything here. I hope, yeah, you can see it. So we have the page URL. This blue part is the website base URL. And then we add just app, question mark, and session ID failed, session ID, checkout session ID, just to signal Stripe we do want it in the response. All right, so this is the complicated part, the create checkout session. Once you nailed it in, everything becomes simple. So we make the successful call, and then we just open an external website of result to URL, right? When we initialize the call of create checkout session, we scrolled until the end of the response and found our URL that takes us to the checkout session. So this is how we take the user. We're not opening it in a new tab, we open it in the same tab, and we open an external website. It's not our website. So right now, after this is done, the user is in Stripe checkout page, right? Is not in our app anymore. We just wait there. Once he finished the checkout, he will either come back to the successful URL or he will come back to the cancelled URL. Now, if he comes back to the successful URL, this is what we created the functionality for. I don't handle currently the cancel URL, but of course, this is very important to do it once you really implement it in your app. For now, we just focus on how to handle the success URL. So when we get the success URL, as you remember, it should send us something like session ID equals bunch of stuff, right? CS test, bunch of stuff. So we get the session ID from page URL is not empty. Every time that the session ID is not empty in the page URL, then do this workflow. So we always handle the session ID. Now, if you remember, we've created a backend workflow that handles the session ID completely for us. So we, from the same URL parameter that we use to trigger this workflow, we get the session ID from the page URL and pass the current user as the user, and we schedule the backend workflow to the current datetime. So immediately handle the session ID, get the session ID API call, from that get the subscription ID API call, right? And from that create the subscription in the Bubble database. And then I also make this another step to go to the current page to reset the session ID, so we don't accidentally trigger it again. So this is just a kind of reset state, reset URL parameter that I do in order to not double trigger what we need to trigger once. And I think that's basically it. Yeah, I went over everything. So when the button join is clicked, step 2 is tricky because of the success URL. We do cover that. We need to add this checkout session ID. Yes, we open the external website and we have the session ID handler. Every time that the session ID is not empty, do this and reset. Okay, so we don't double trigger anything. So that's it. We have the feature ready. Now, to see it in action, we need to follow some few easy steps. So right now you have the feature ready, but it's not working yet. You can do the stuff. You can click. So from here on, it's pretty easy. First step, you just drop the feature wherever you want it to be. So for my case, I have this reusable element component, right? We've created it in a single reusable element. Now I have the app page that we always talked about, and everything is empty here, very empty, very simple. I just drop the component, search for the products. Because I only have 3 products in the database, it's fine to make it without constraints. But if you have products that only for this organization or product for only this store and you have a lot of products, yes, make constraints, find the right products. For me, it's only 3 products. We can see them all here. So once I drop the component here and search for the products, automatically it happens. All the products are filled with the right names, with the right features, with the right prices, and the right connection of price ID to give to Stripe, right? This is the most important the most important part. Instead of not only the UI that we show the right stuff, that Stripe actually understand that it needs to charge either $94, either $800 or $2,700. This is super key important. Now let's continue to step 2. Step 2 is just add this small text right here. This small text is a search for subscription when the owner is current user. Okay, so we show only the current user subscription and we format this as a text. This is not something for UI or you need to do. I just want to show you that the subscription has been created in the database once we come back from the checkout, right? We handle the session ID and it automatically creates the subscription. So here I just format as a text this subscription product name. So we have premium, this is the product name. Then comma, this subscription product default price amount formatted as currency. And then we have the $800 currency. And then this subscription status display. We set it as active by default when we handle the session ID, so it's active. Now you can buy different and it will be a different price, right? If I join standard, it wouldn't be 800 and it wouldn't be premium name. Great. Now I already said it a few times, but just make sure that you have all the price and product IDs. You have my example of product and price IDs in the database. I only have 3 products, 3 prices, and how I use them. Pretty simple. I don't think you need to overcomplicate that. And lastly, to actually see it work, log the user so you actually save the owner, unlike me, saving an empty user here, right? When I tested it and built it, I did use my own user, but right now I wasn't logged into my user, so it didn't save the owner. So make sure you log in before you actually buy join standard, join premium, join VIP. And if you already have some logic and the subscription plans are only visible to users who are already logged in, so you're safe, that's not an issue. And now every subscription you buy should be visible in the database as a new subscription and in the random text we threw below. So you can see I try to buy join standard, join premium and join VIP. It allowed me to buy them all. Now, of course, we don't want users to buy 3 subscription they won't buy. Like, we don't mind. You want to buy 3 subscription for us? Be my guest. But they won't buy 3 subscriptions. Here we start thinking about how we need to segment them to different users. Each user should be able to access different features in the app, and we can use it by searching for or saving the active subscription on the user object, right? So then we can restrict it from some of the feature, we can allow it to use some of the other features. And these are just some of the next steps to this feature, to the advanced part, right? Today we learned how to buy that and use the checkout session, but we also need for the feature to fully be functional in complex app environments. We need to restrict features, we need to allow downgrade, allow upgrade, allow cancellations. Currently the subscription plans aren't supporting that here. Maybe you want to add free trial, maybe you want to add one-time payments. A lot of things that you can do here. It's very depending on your app use case and your functionality and how do you want to price yourself. So yeah, from here it's more customizations, but you can see how the main flow of communicating and charging payment from user with Stripe works, especially in tiers and subscriptions, but you can take it also for one-time purchases and products. All right, so if you like the content and you find some value in it, please tell me by leaving a like, making a comment. It will really make my day and will encourage me to continue doing awesome stuff with Bubble. And also, I would like to know in the comments, how are you guys building your SaaS idea? Are you hiring a dev team? Are you learning to code yourself? Are you using no-code tools or figuring it out or doing something else? I would like to hear from you. And of course, this template can be found in my school community. It's a free school community that we have builders, building fun, SaaS, making money, all the good stuff. And if you're a Bubble developer, I will highly encourage you to come here. We're gonna be the best in the space. Well, I will see you in the next time. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.